Rachel says, I got a 2019 Hyundai Sonata. The engine blew up yesterday at 55,000 miles. They won't honor the warranty because I used the car for my driver's ed business. Any advice? Yeah, never buy one in the first place. I tell people not to. They still have engine problems in those things. I don't know, you shouldn't have told them you're using it for driver's ed. If you had some kind of a sticker on it, you should have taken them off and said, here's my car. How the heck are they going to know what you do with your car, you know? But, yeah, a lot of stuff works that way. Commercial warranties are just garbage. I remember back in the day, there was a battery company in Houston that I bought batteries from. And when I bought them, they'd give me a 2-year warranty, free replacement, right? But they were all naked batteries in the back, black, and they'd put stickers on them. And I asked the guys, I said, well, what is it? He said, well, they're all the same battery. You just get a different warranty depending on how much you pay for it. But he said, here's one that's going to the city of Houston that's commercial, and all they get is a 90-day warranty. So they often stink you over when it comes to giving warranties on commercial stuff. So if you don't have to tell them, don't tell them. It's too late now, though. Don't buy another one. I don't care who's driving. If I had a car with an engine that blew up at 55,000 miles, I would rant and rail and tell people, never buy another one of those clunkers. CT says, Scotty, I'm thinking about the 2021 F-150. What engine would you get? Only engine I get would be a normally aspirated V8 engine. I would not get a turbocharged one. I would not buy those EcoBoost V6s. They really have problems. Anything you're turbocharging and throwing GDI injection on top of that, they wear out too fast. They just do. There's actually a class action suit against that V6 EcoBoost engine because of the problems that those engines have had. So the V8 is a good engine. I would get the V8. I wouldn't mess with the V6. And if you're thinking about like a Silverado, don't even think about buying a 4-cylinder one. That's just absurd. Zammer223 says, Scotty, what do you think buying a 2001 Honda Prelude that has 230,000 miles, but it's a blown head gasket? All right. One, you don't know if it's just a blown head gasket with 230,000 miles. The block could be warped. The head could be cracked. All kinds of things. If you want to buy a toy and you can get it for practically nothing, say $400, and you want to put another engine in it or completely rebuild the engine, go right ahead, but don't pay much for it because with a blown engine, they're worth almost nothing. You know, let's face it, it's a 19-year-old Honda. What the heck? You're not going to pay too much money for it, especially with 230,000 miles. But they're fun cars. If you want to fix the engine or get another engine, there's plenty of used engines out there and gamble with it, and you're mechanically inclined, go ahead and get yourself a toy, but don't pay much for it because it's not worth much. August Facette says, have you ever worked on any Alfa Romeos with the twin spark engines? Oh, yeah, I have. Now, it's basically really old-style technology. Many companies have tried it. Mercedes has tried it. Nissan's tried it. Alfa Romeo. A lot of people have tried it. It's to try to get more fire in, to make it more efficient. Some of the systems will only fire one spark plug at one time and others at other times, some of them both. But it's kind of a gimmicky thing. If it really worked that well, all the manufacturers would put them that way because if something's more efficient, they would all use it. And they don't, so it's telling you, really, it doesn't do all that much. From my experience, most of the European cars went to it to try to pass emissions because they have stricter emissions and they would pollute a little bit less that way. They didn't run all that much different. But it's just kind of a gimmick that people have tried, comes and goes. It's not that big of a deal, though. Like I say, if it really did something, they would make them all that way. Loves My Kitty said, loved his video yesterday on Lotus Yellow, BK Monster. Yeah, you know, it's fascinating because that Lotus had the same exact engine as my son's Toyota Sienna. They were both the same year, and they had the same exact Toyota engine, a 3.5-liter V6. Of course, the Lotus one was souped up to put up a lot of horsepower, but it's the same basic engine. Lotus doesn't make their own engines, and now they're owned by Geely, the gigantic company that also owns Volvo. Volvo too, and they're even talking about making electric car Lotuses, which of course would be screamers because electric motors put out horsepower instantaneously. The torque is insane for acceleration. So hey, I'm sure one day they'll probably be messing around with an electric Lotus. The Fisherman 3634 says, Scotty, what do you think of the Triton V8? They can have problems if people don't take care of them like any other one. I had a guy the other day brought one over. He says, oh man, look, it's leaking all this stuff. And I said, well, let me look at it. And I noticed when I looked in the door jamb, it said it was a wrecked car that it had a re-title for a salvage title. So I said, did you buy this as a salvage? Yeah. He says, I got a real good deal. I said, well, understand. Let's figure out where it was wrecked. Well, it was wrecked in the front because the front clip had been replaced. Oh, front. Obviously, that hit the engine, but it was still the same engine. And now the pulleys wobbled. They were leaking oil. The water pump was going because that probably got hit when it was wrecked. It had a new radiator now, but originally, obviously, it smashed into the front of the engine, was in a wreck. So, if not maintained, there can be problems. Ricardo Lorera says, to daily drive 60 miles, I'm considering a Civic 2016 or a BMW 328 2014. Which is more reliable? Well, it depends on what kind of reliability you want. If you want it to reliably break down, get the BMW because it will reliably break down. If you want something that is reliable to drive and will very rarely break down, get the Honda. Now, both ways, though, you're talking about a used car. So no matter what you do, if you're looking at a used car, get a mechanic like me to check it out. Don't trust anybody. They'll tell you all kinds of tales. It's got a new engine, got a new transmission, blah, blah, blah. You want a mechanic to check it out. Do not trust anybody selling the car, but just apples, oranges. The Civic is a million times better for long life and reliability. The BMW is a lot of fun to drive if you got an endless supply of money. Soccerhead 548 says, Scotty, what do you think of a 1999 Honda Accord, 260,000 miles in the body with 160,000 engine, putting it for $1,100? Getting it from a mechanic, I know. Well, I hope you trust the guy. But, I mean, hey, $1,100 for a Honda Accord if it runs, and it's got an engine that really has 160,000 miles on it. That's a fair price. Those things can run forever. Just ask them about the transmission. I'm sure it's got an automatic transmission. Ask them what kind of shape that's in, and perhaps ask for a 30-day guarantee, just in case. You never know. You never know. The New York Half Geek says, Scotty, what do you think of the older Honda Pilots? I'm thinking about getting one to tow a small camper. My budget is $6,000. What do you think? They were well made. Now, you don't want to get one that's got like 250,000 miles on it unless you get it for $500. But I had a customer just buy one for $3,000. It had 140,000 miles. It runs great. He loves it. He's totally happy with it. That V6 engine has plenty enough horsepower for pulling a small camper. And you should be able to look around and find one in that price range. Look around for estate sales, stuff like that. Somebody maybe joined the Army and they got to sell it. Look around for a good deal. And it can be excellent vehicles for towing small stuff. Nothing large, but small campers, perfectly fine. Anthony Aguirre says, what are your thoughts on a 2008 Mini Cooper? All right. They are BMWs made by the English in Britain. If you buy a new one, you lose your shirt. But here's the trick. If you can find a used one low mileage, they can be fun knock-around cars. They're very expensive to repairs if you don't maintain them, if the brakes break because you let the rotors get eaten up from bare steel when the pads wear out and you don't change them. If you don't change the oil a lot, the engines do have a tendency of blowing up. You know, their automatic transmissions are kind of junky, but you can get them with standard transmissions. If you can find a good used one with a standard transmission, they can be a lot of fun. You can get them pretty cheap. Don't buy a new one, it's a waste of money. And never buy one without having a mechanic check it out. But if you can get it dirt cheap enough, go out and have some fun, you know? It's not like they're absolute piles of junk like a Fiat 500. There are many steps above those things. And they are cute and fun to drive around. What the heck? You want one that's a toy for a weekend toy if you get it cheap? And the mechanic says, yeah, it's okay now. Puts a scan tool and says there's nothing really big wrong. Get it cheap. Have some fun. Usurping Alou says, '07 Mustang V6. Should I get it or not? It's a sports car, but it's a V6 manual. The guys that drive them like maniacs always get the V8 manuals and burn everything out. With the V6s, they generally don't drive as fast. Have a mechanic check it out. If he says it's good, it could be an excellent vehicle because with the less horsepower, there's less breakage on the transmission, on the differential, on the suspension system. There's less weight. It's a lighter car. And they're fun to drive. You know, they're not race cars with the V6, but they're plenty fast enough to get you where you're going. For mechanical case, it could be a fun car to drive around. Matt Mail says, the timing chain of my Infiniti Q45 is rattling. It's only got 120,000 miles. Thoughts on fixing it? Okay, what you want to try first is see if you can find a mechanic who is willing to put timing chain tensioners on it. What often happens on those engines is the tensioners that keep the chain tight wear out. And if you got a mechanic who's willing to go in there, take some of it apart, and put new tensioners on, you might find the rattling will go away. If it doesn't, you're going to have to replace all the chains. It's a very expensive endeavor. You got 120,000 miles. Do you really want to put that kind of money in a car? But if you can find a guy that'll do just the tensioners, often that will fix it. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.